again, we pray this week that you would bless the words that Alex and I put onto camera, and then that we say in person on Sunday, so that we can hear.
Hello? Did we interrupt your prayer?
You did.
Okay, well, we got
I know the
a group
indignities,
that wants to
Pastor,
say
I know.
hello.
I know.
Oh, is
Okay,
this
all
is
right.
this on video too?
This is
Yes,
your,
we
this
hope
is your
so.
cape.
So,
Hi, Mom.
well, as you may
Hi.
be aware, coming up next week is a little special day.
Yeah.
And the fact is, you like to refer to them, they're like milestone birthdays.
Oh.
Yes.
And I don't
Yeah.
want to say exactly what it would be, but it involves a hill.
Okay.
And if you were the little train that could,
I would be over it.
you would be saying, you wouldn't be saying, I think I can, I think I can. You'd be saying, I got it made.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've been talking to the members who watch this online and to the people who worship here in person, and they've been collecting some money, and they have a little gift to give you. And
Wow.
we think you'll be able to do a little fishing trip with
Wow.
them. Yes, we think so too. And I do want to say, if you'd still like to donate, checks can be made out to Concordia and submitted by the end of July, and we will try to get it where it belongs.
Wow.
Okay, yes. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And one more thing.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Pastor. Happy birthday to you.
We love you, Pastor.
So you just, I guess you just persevere, and you put one foot in front of the other.
Put your head forward and momentum will
and you
carry
don't die.
Momentum keeps you going. That's it.
Okay, save it for the sermon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome to Concordia Church Online.
That was really a surprise. I'm just sitting here praying and getting ready to tape, and here they come in, and both just that anybody even says, hey, happy birthday. I love being part of Concordia. And I love being part of this family, and I just wanted to say to all of you out there, thank you. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for your care, your love, your support of me. Thanks for that incredible gift when all I did was like live another day, another year. You guys are awesome. Thanks. And now let's watch where we're going today, how God lifts us up when sometimes life pulls us down.
I want you to remember that God's created everything you see. He breathed it into existence. Remember when his people were caught up in slavery? He rescued them. What he did was he parted the sea, and he made a way for them, and then he delivered their enemies to them, and he unlocks wombs, and he provides water from a rock, and he provides manna from heaven, and he brought down the walls of Jericho. He froze the sun, allowing victory. He's toppled giants with tiny stones. He's brought fire from heaven. He's shut the mouths of lions. He preserved life in the belly of a well. He's fed thousands with a few loaves. He gives the weak strength. He heals the sick. He's made the blind see, the deaf hear, the mute speak, the lame walk, and he's overcome evil, and he's made a way through death for you and me by the death and the resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ, that we will live with him forever. We will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever and ever and ever. What are we afraid of? His resume is flawless. He controls everything. And he loves you.
So if what you just watched in that video is true, and I think it really is, I believe that it's really true, then why are we so afraid sometimes? Is it perhaps, could it be that life is just scary sometimes? Could it be that maybe the weight of this past year has just kind of weakened us somewhat, or maybe a lot? Could it be that the way sometimes is just really dark and dreary and looks like it's going to be for a while? Could it be that you're just so tired? Or could it be that maybe there's so much going on both inside of you and around you and outside of you that you just feel like you're going to burst? Or could it be maybe that what you're feeling is you're going to keep on feeling that even though you don't want to and you need it to change? Could be any of that. Could be a lot of that. You know, it could also be that we're sheep. If you've been with me in this series, sheep are easily frightened, easily scared. And not only that, that scared kind of turns into a groupthink where one sheep gets frightened by something and the other sheep see it, and even though they didn't see what caused the sheep to be frightened, they're frightened because the other sheep is frightened, and the other sheep are frightened because another sheep is frightened, and that whole group thing happens and a whole bunch of sheep get scared. And well, there's some stuff that sheep are scared of that they really don't even have a reason to be scared of. You know, I mentioned earlier in this series about how I read that a jackrabbit just jumping out from behind a bush can scare a sheep. Now, what in the world does the sheep have to be scared of a jackrabbit for? It's way bigger. What's the jackrabbit going to do? Knock it over? Gum it to death? That's an irrational fear, but well, we got those, don't we? And then there's other stuff that the sheep really do have a reason to be afraid of, because it's not only dangerous, it can be deadly. Things like robbers, predators, getting turned over, getting lost. Those were all things that the sheep faced on a regular basis, and here's the deal with that: they couldn't be avoided. Because a lot of those things, a lot of those dangers were actually encountered on the annual treks, the yearly treks from the home ranch up to the summer pastures in the high country. And what they do is, as they're going up there, sheep didn't rock climb, right? They weren't airlifted or roped up. They actually just walked up to the high country as they were led by the shepherd, and they grazed along the way. Now the easiest and the best way up were through these valleys or these deep defiles, because it was a little more gradual and there was better food and better water, but because it was surrounded by cliffs and other things like that, there were also shadows that got into those valleys. There were times of the day, even in the middle of the day, when places were kind of dark or in the shadows. And, well, shadows can be scary. The dark can be scary because it holds scary stuff. And you see, predators also knew that sheep were making those annual treks, and so they were ready for them, and they were hiding there and lurking in those places to try to get the sheep. And I think that's what David's probably thinking of when he writes this part of the psalm. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. I mean, the phrase, the valley of the shadow of death, is probably best translated there, the deepest, darkest valleys. And when you're talking about deepest, darkest valleys, it's like those ones that they were going through on the way to the high country, which means that David's thinking not just about death, which certainly is very scary, But he's also thinking about all those other dark and bitter experiences in life that scare us too. Now, today's conversation is not about avoiding the scary stuff. I think that's kind of impossible. Wouldn't you agree? But what today's conversation is about, it's about what to do when you're scared, and how to deal with that scary stuff, and actually how, even though you're frightened, how you can make it through those deepest, darkest valleys. All right, but before we make it through those fears, we first got to identify what those fears are. So I want you to pause for a moment and just reflect on this, and stay here for a few minutes. What are you afraid of right now? Fear. We don't seek it. We don't want it. We'd rather avoid it altogether. But life's full of it. And not only because life's hard, but also, and here I'm speaking to people of faith, because the only way to the high country is through the valley. Not around it, not over it, but through it. Okay? And through all the shadows that linger in the valley. And there's scary things in the shadows. And that means that much of the time, even though I don't want to be, I'm afraid. Maybe you can relate. Afraid that I'm not up to this challenge. Afraid that I'm going to be stuck here. This here is not a good spot. Afraid that everything's going wrong, that it's going to just continue. Afraid that I am going to break because I am so stretched thin and stressed out, and that's been going on for so long that I'm just going to burst. Afraid that the doctor report that's coming isn't going to change my life in a good way. Afraid, again, people of faith, afraid that because I don't feel like I'm in a very good God place right now, that I might actually be losing my faith. Those are deepest, darkest valleys, aren't they? Those are places where the shadows run long and deep, and the fears aren't imagined. They're very, very real. So, what's the way through that? Right? How do I stop being afraid? Two big things I want to point out here. First of all, even on your darkest days, keep moving. All right? Keep moving. I mean, sometimes we get so used to the shadows that it's like we just feel like lying down and taking a nap there or something. I mean, mistake. Mistake, because the shadows is the place where fear resides. If we want to get to that pace of peace and calm and rest, we got to go through the valley, not linger in the shadows. Kerry Newhoff, one of the bloggers that I follow, shared this, and boy, it's been a good thing for me. He said, never quit on your worst day. Never quit on your worst day. What he's saying is, on your worst day, don't just stop. Keep moving. Keep moving. So if you find yourself in the shadows right now, I would encourage you, don't stop there. All right, just keep moving, even if it's just a small little step. Let me give you a small couple of steps you could take. Maybe the small step is just, don't keep it all in, just talk to somebody else about your stuff. Maybe the small steps, hey, I'm going to go talk to a counselor about my stuff. Maybe the small step's going to be, I'm going to cry out to God about this stuff. But when you're in the dark valley, don't stay there, keep moving. Number two, remember, you're not in the valley all by yourself. You are not alone in the valley. Now who else is there? Well, other sheep, of course, and sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it just helps to have others around, but the other sheep aren't always a lot of help when you're scared, are they? Because when one sheep gets scared, a whole bunch of other sheep tend to get scared. And boy, isn't that how your bad days get worse sometimes? You start sharing the bad stuff with people because you're thinking, well, if I share it, it is that good step and it's going to get things out and I'm not holding it in. But the people around you start piling on and say, oh yeah, that's really bad, and they add things and makes it worse, and you're scared, and then they are scared, and then somebody else is scared, and you both get more scared, and that's how that whole downward spiral starts. Or our devices. I mean, they can do the same thing. We got alerts on our devices so that we can, especially on social, we can keep up to date. We can know what people are thinking and feeling. And then all these alerts start coming in about, this is the end of the world, and this thing is so terrible. And then we kind of ask somebody else about it, and we see them tweeting and retweeting and sharing, and then a whole bunch of people sharing. And what? Do you end up feeling better? Or are you more scared than you were when you started? I mean, when David writes this again, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The you he's talking about isn't the other sheep. It's the shepherd. It's the shepherd. I mean, David's point here is that even when the sheep are in the shadows, when the sheep see the shepherd, they're not quite as scared as they were before. So they're not frozen in place because they see the shepherd. And they're able to keep moving and follow the shepherd through those deep, dark valleys. Here's a good translation. I will stop being afraid because you are with me. And the you again being the shepherd. Now why is that? What is it about the presence of the shepherd that makes that big a difference for the sheep? Well, the sheep have developed a personal relationship with the shepherd, right? He knows each of them by name. And the sheep have felt the shepherd's care. And the sheep have seen the shepherd's track record. And all that enables that, makes the sheep trust the shepherd. Right? They trust the shepherd and they find comfort in the shepherd. And even just seeing the shepherd reassures them. Right? Now let me fast forward from that insight to Jesus. Jesus said this in John chapter 10. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Remember, personal relationship, care, track record. Well, that sentence is telling us a couple things about Jesus. First, he loves us so much that he sacrifices himself for us, that he dies for us, that he gives up his life for us. But the second thing that it's telling us is that Jesus knows about dark valleys. He knows what our dark valleys are like. I mean, read the stories in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of just the week that went on before Jesus ended up on a cross. I mean, how much darker can it get than people hating you so much that they want to kill you? And then all your friends abandoning you and running away, and you being arrested for something you didn't do, and tried and convicted unjustly, and then beaten and whipped and nailed to a cross, an instrument of torture, and everybody around you, or almost everybody there, just ridiculing you and mocking you and making fun of you. And then in your worst moment, calling out to the Father, and for the one and only time, for all eternity, looking up to the Father and the Father turning his face away. My God, why have you forsaken me? Yet Jesus knows dark valleys. In fact, he's been in every one. And that means that Jesus does know what we're going through. But here's the other thing. Jesus also knows the way through the darkness. All right, because Jesus went into the valley of the shadow of death and he died, but he didn't stay dead. He actually ended up living to tell about it. Easter was a real event. All right, so when we see our shepherd, we not only know that he loves us, we also know that he's strong enough to deal with the darkness. And that's what the next phrase in this sentence of David's psalm talks about. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, the rod was the shepherd's main weapon of defense. It was a club that he could use to defend and against predators if they were close. It was a club that he could use to kind of beat the bushes for things like snakes and other things that might be hiding there and whack them before they got too close to the sheep. It was also something that he could throw. If he couldn't run to the sheep in time and they were in trouble, he could throw it at a predator with skill and with accuracy. He could also throw it near the sheep if he saw the sheep wandering off into some dangerous place, and he could just whiz it by them so they'd be startled and come back to the flock. Right? The rod was the big thing that the shepherd used to protect them, to fight for them. Now, think of what that means when we're walking through the dark valleys. Right? When the sheep are walking through the dark valleys, they knew that danger lurked there, but they could have, their comfort was in seeing the rod in the hands of the shepherd. Right? Because when they saw that, they knew they didn't have to fend for themselves. They knew they didn't have to fight for themselves. In fact, they'd learned they really couldn't fight for themselves. But the shepherd did it for them. Now again, another fast forward. Here's what that means. It means that Jesus is my defender in the fight. It means that Jesus is my protector in those dark valleys. It means that Jesus fights for me in those dark valleys. Let me give you a little Bible on that. Deuteronomy chapter 3. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God himself will fight for you. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 15. Love this one. Do not be afraid. Do not lose hope because of this huge army. The battle is not yours. It is God's. We see the rod in the shepherd's hands, and we know, I've got someone here who's going to fight for me and who's going to protect me and who's strong enough to deal with this. So I want you to think about this right now. Again, hit pause and spend a little time here and reflect, or if you're watching with someone or listening with someone, talk about this. Where do you need God to be fighting for you right now? Okay, where do you need God to be fighting for you right now? And then after you've thought about that and talked about it a little bit, well, talk to God about that thing too, because remember, your shepherd is with you in that dark valley. All right, he's certainly close enough to hear your voice. Okay, the rod was an image again of protection. It was an image to say that the shepherd fights for the sheep. How about the staff, which he said also comforts him? Well, the staff was used to draw the sheep close. Sometimes they used the staff to take a newborn and bring it close to its mother. Sometimes they'd use the staff to catch a sheep and draw the sheep close to himself. Sometimes the shepherd would just reach out and touch the sheep with his staff just to kind of have this little special connection. It was this intimacy and this connection and draw the sheep close. Staff was also used to guide the sheep. You know, as they're going through those valleys, there were some dangerous places and some places they could fall and hurt themselves. So the shepherd would just reach out with the staff and gently touch the sheep's side and kind of guide them in the way that they should go. Third thing the staff was used for was to rescue sheep that got into trouble. Sometimes they'd get stuck in some brambles and they'd use the staff to kind of pull them out of there. Or with that crook of the staff, sometimes they'd fall into a place that they couldn't get them out of, but the shepherd would reach down with the staff and again pull them out and rescue the sheep. And the sheep experienced all that, and no wonder it comforts them even in the dark valleys when they see the shepherd with rod and staff in hand. Right? When they see the rod, they know they're protected. When they see the staff, they're remembering, oh, that's what the shepherd's leaning on as he's watching over me. As he's watching over me, and as he's guarding me, and as he's taking care of me. All right? It's that image of the tender, loving care of the shepherd who draws me close, who guides me in the right way, who rescues me when I fall. And now, how does that image apply to us? Well, for us, it's that image that helps us sense I'm his, and he's mine. And he wants me close, and he draws me close, and I'm watched over, and I'm cared for, and I'm loved, and if I fall, I'm going to be rescued. We need that anytime, don't we? But especially, I think, in these deep, dark valleys. That we need to know it's the shepherd, when we're afraid, who comes close. It's the shepherd who's watching over me and protecting me, and the shepherd who's drawing me close, and the shepherd who's leading me, and the shepherd who's rescuing me, and the shepherd who's going to get me through this valley. I think maybe that's what Paul, who knew a lot about dark valleys, was thinking about when he wrote this, 2 Corinthians chapter 4. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we're not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. What I really sense there is there's this safety and security and even a sense of serenity while you're still in the valley. Even before you've made it out of the shadows. Why? Because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have this sense of the good shepherd's with me in the darkness, not only caring for me and protecting me and watching over me, but he's also reminding me of a few things. He's reminding me, number one, that the shadow is just a shadow. And the shadow really can't harm me. I think that's why David uses that image. He's also reminding me that a shadow can hide things which can hurt me, which is why you keep moving, all right? You don't linger in the shadows if you can help it, and you come when the shepherd calls. And he's reminding me, number three, that, for a shadow to even be there, for a shadow to exist, what do you need? You need light. So even in the deepest, darkest valleys, in the valley of the shadow of death, light is still there. Let me take you to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And when you're in the deepest part of the valley, that might not seem like it's much light. But it's enough. It's enough to see the shepherd. It's enough to see that you're not alone, that the shepherd is with you. It's enough to see him, to hear his voice, to be encouraged, and to follow him. To follow him through the valley. So, here's my advice, and whenever you happen to find yourself in the valley and starting to get scared, look for Jesus. Look for Jesus, the good shepherd. He's there. I promise you, he's there. Second, lean into Jesus. Come close to the good shepherd. Come closer. The closer you are, the safer you feel. And the closer that you are to his rod and his staff, the closer you are to his protection and comfort. Now, see, the problem in the deep valleys doesn't come when you're close to the shepherd. The problem comes when you're trying to navigate those dark valleys all by yourself. So if you find yourself in one of those right now, again, look for Jesus and lean into Jesus. Don't let those shadows scare you, and then listen to the shepherd's voice. Now, some of you, I think, might be in one of those deep, dark places right now. So I want to close this not by you listening to my voice, but listen to the voice of the shepherd. Isaiah 41, verse 10. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Isaiah 43, 1-3 from the Message. Don't be afraid. I've redeemed you. I've called your name. You're mine. When you're in over your head, I'll be there with you. When you're in rough waters, you will not go down. When you're between a rock and a hard place, it won't be a dead end. Because I am God, your personal God, the Holy of Israel, your Savior. John 16:33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world.